Meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda for tonight on either side of the room, and if you haven't already done so, I'd encourage you to please pick up a copy and follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our agenda, as well as a section under item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not appearing on our agenda tonight. So if you follow along with the agenda, you'll know exactly when there'll be an opportunity for public comment. It is our custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this juncture, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Terrific. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes from our December 10th, 2013 regular village council meeting. Are there any changes, questions, corrections, adjustments, modifications from any members of the village council with respect to those minutes? Hearing none, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes have been adopted. Terrific. And that brings us right to item 4, which is the section of our meeting reserved for public comments. And I just want to make sure you've had lots of time to think about your public comments. So we're going to take a short commercial break, and I'm going to read a proclamation, which I'm going to present to representatives from none other than our very own Good Samaritan Hospital, who are here tonight to receive this proclamation, and we couldn't be happier to give it to them. It's the last official proclamation of 2013. Whereas Advocate Good Samaritan Hospital, located at 3815 Highland Avenue in the village of Downers Grove, provides clinically excellent, compassionate health care services. Whereas Advocate Good Samaritan Hospital has operated in the village of Downers Grove since 1976. Whereas Advocate Good Samaritan Hospital seeks to promote a culture in which concern for the environment is integral to the organization's deliberation, decision-making, and action. And whereas Advocate Good Samaritan Hospital has made substantial efforts to be a leader in environmentally sustainable practices, specifically in the areas of waste reduction, recycling, water conservation, stormwater pollution prevention, energy conservation, transportation, public awareness, education, and innovation. I don't think you missed any. You got them all. Checked every box. Whereas the Environmental Concerns Commission of the Village of Downers Grove has acknowledged the green business practices of Advocate Good Samaritan Hospital and recognizes Advocate Good Samaritan Hospital as a Downers Grove green business. Actually, we did this on November 4th, 2013 with a flag-raising ceremony, partnering with Scarce out at the hospital itself, but tonight's the public televised proclamation. Therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim Advocate Good Samaritan Hospital to be a Village of Downers Grove green business. Welcome to a very elite and exclusive club, and appreciate all your efforts for doing so. I'd like to come down and provide you with the proclamation, and I'm sure we have a representative who would like to receive it. Sure. Good to see you, and then of course I'm going to invite you to the podium if you wanted to say a few words. You don't have to. No prepared speech. Terrific. Thank you very much, and thank you for everything you do, and congratulations on being a great business.
Can I say one?
You can say, well, tonight, 10 words. Please.
Thank you very much for this proclamation. I just, mainly I really wanted to acknowledge the green team, the hospital's green team, which is about 25 employees of the hospital that are dedicated to environmental stewardship. And they are really the sort of the true benefactors and the true people behind this proclamation. They've worked really hard. We have 3 of them represented here tonight. And this proclamation and our work to become the third green business in the village of Downers Grove is really the result of their efforts, and I wanted to say thank you and acknowledge them publicly. Tonight we have representatives. We have Cindy Keith, Craig McKenzie, and Sabu Joseph, so I wanted to say thank you. And thank you to the village council. Appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Congratulations. And we do greatly appreciate your efforts, and that's one of the reasons why the Village and the Environmental Concerns Commission in particular came up with the Green Business Recognition, as we hope to inspire more businesses within our community to follow similar practices to those that you have exemplified and that we've recognized here tonight. So thank you for doing so, and once again, being leaders in our community. Now, everyone's had plenty of time to think about item 4, questions and comments of a general nature. We are on item 4 on the agenda. If there are any questions or comments of a general nature from any members of the audience with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight, we would invite you to please come down to the podium, give us your name and address, and we'd welcome hearing from you. Good evening, Mr. Falish.
Good evening, Mayor. Frank Falish, 820 Prairie Avenue. You know, I've been wondering for a little while what the pavement on between Grant and Lincoln, on both sides, there's about an 18-inch strip of concrete. Now, this is just that one area that was put in recently. What is the reason for that? It has to cost more money to do that, and I couldn't understand why they would do something like that. Is it has to be more costly because there's two operations. If they did in one shot with a asphalt, it would be, I would assume, a lot cheaper.
I would have to defer to our Public Works Department, who would probably want to look into that and get back to it, but get back to you tonight. And certainly we know how to reach you, Mr. Falish. If you wouldn't mind, we can get the specific details on that one. Although I'd probably point out that it might cost more than one thing, but it's probably less than something else. So I'm sure there was a good reason for it. For example, if we were to put in curb and gutter, it would cost even more.
Well, there's no curbs.
Correct, which would cost more.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there was
but-
obviously a reason for it. It probably has to do with the design.
Well, yeah, but
I don't know as I sit here
it's
right
just
now.
one strip between Lincoln and Grant.
We'll check into it. and
The other
let you know.
side was repaved a couple of years before. They didn't do that, and I haven't seen anything like that in the village beside this one on Elm Street.
We'll check into it and get back to you with the information.
Okay,
Thank you for
thank
your
you.
question. Other questions or comments of a general nature from any members of the audience? Hearing none, we'll move right along to item 5 on our agenda tonight, which features council member reports, gives an opportunity for members of the village council to report out on goings-on in the community. Are there any members of the village council that have any matters they would like to report? We'll start with Commissioner Barnett tonight.
I don't, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to wish everybody a happy, safe, and healthy holiday season. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Commissioner Rankin?
I wanted to remind everyone that this weekend is the last weekend that the Santa House is downtown from 1 to 4. My kids always enjoy it. Santa always knows their name and knows the pet's name, and it's very interesting. And there's a box to leave a letter for Santa, too. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Durkin?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to wish my son Gavin a happy 5th birthday. I know he's at home watching. And while we're talking about Santa, I know he's on his best behavior because Christopher the elf is keeping a very good eye on he and his sister. So I just want to wish my son a very happy birthday. It's actually tomorrow. He'll be the big 5, and he's so excited because there's one big hand that he shows you instead of 4 or however he makes 4. So I just want to do that along with the rest of my colleagues. Wish everyone a very happy holiday season. If you're traveling, safe travels. And more importantly, as I continue to say, and will do so until the cows come home, that is, please remember to do your Christmas shopping here in Downers Grove. We'd love to have your sales tax revenue, and we have all the services and merchandise that one could possibly need, including what soon will be a new Lamborghini dealer. So for those that are looking for a Lamborghini after tonight's drawing, please remember Downers Grove. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And when will we be considering that bovine ordinance? Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Newstat.
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to wish our residents and visitors a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday.
You know, this was another award-winning year for the Village of Downers Grove. My colleagues and I are made to look good up here because of what our staff does each and every day. So thank you to our village staff from every department, every nook and cranny around Village Hall, Police Department, Fire Department, Fleet Services. I've got a story about them, but I won't tell it tonight. You know, this village is a great municipality, and we're getting better every day. So that's to our staff. Thank you very much for that. As we are all celebrating Christmas and our holiday of choice, let's just try to remember that there are people protecting and serving us on those holiday days. Police, fire, and public works staff are here to protect and serve us on those days, and they're away from their families. So if you can give an extra thought or prayer for them as they go out and make sure this roads and streets are safe for us to celebrate, please do. Thank you and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't know if I could top the manner in which my colleagues have expressed the holiday sentiments for cheer, safety, and goodwill, and success and prosperity in 2014. So I will simply say, I agree. Well said.
Ditto.
That brings us to item 6 on our agenda, which is reserved for public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so we'll go right to item 7, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any items on the consent agenda? Hearing none. Questions or comments from members of the Village Council with respect to any items on the consent agenda? Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I had a couple questions in response to the questions that were answered about the Economic Development Corporation. On the back side here, the first question, full question, how much do the DuPage County municipalities pay for tourism service? Talk about the Naperville and Lyle Convention and Visitors Bureau having tourism budgets of over $1 million in Naperville's case and more than $750,000 in Lyle's case. Is that, it says the revenue is generated by the local hotel tax. Is that exclusively by the local hotel tax, or is there supplemental revenue from the village that's for those bureaus?
And to answer tonight's question, we have Michael Casa from the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation. Welcome, Mr. Casa.
Good evening, Mayor, Village Commissioners. Michael Casa, President, Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation. That was a difficult question to answer because each municipality allocates money to support tourism in different ways. For example, you cited the case of Naperville. They have an in-house economic development staff as part of their village. I do not know what monies they expend to support that function. They then take their hotel tax and allocate, it's about 90% of it, toward tourism. So they do have an economic development budget as well. It's just separate from tourism. Okay. The model that we use is more aligned with Naperville, which is that we have an economic development corporation that also performs the tourism function. So in 2006, when we took on that additional role, we were able to leverage the resources we have within our organization, personnel, office space, equipment, all those administrative costs. Rather than allocate them separately for tourism, we've had basically an economy of scale where we can use those additional resources to also support tourism. Because the hotel tax, even though it's allocated 50% of it for us for our organization for economic development, it is supporting tourism as well. So that's why it's difficult to quantify this compared to other towns, because every municipality has a different formula that they use.
So in this table here, $416,228 in 2013, that represents half of this year's hotel tax?
That's correct.
Okay. That makes sense. So we're taking half of the hotel tax plus this $50,000 that we'd allocate here to this total budget of $466,288 or 228. Yes. Okay, that makes sense. So in effect, this is less money than Naperville would be spending because we're only taking half the hotel tax plus a supplement, whereas they're taking 90% of their hotel tax towards the Visitors Bureau.
That was Lyle.
Oh, Lyle.
Yeah. The Naperville model, which is sort of the one that we have, again, they have their Economic Development Corporation also running their Visitors Bureau. The reason the Naperville has such a large budget is they have 23 hotels. That's the reason.
It's a massive town.
Yeah, that's the reason.
So I think one of the points that I'm trying to make is that it's clear to me, and when I first saw this, I had a lot of concern, what is this, giving them extra money? But in effect here, we're spending less money than the comparable municipalities are and getting arguably more services, for example, than our neighbor Lyle, and I would argue.
Amen.
I think you'd be right.
You're absolutely right.
So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that compliment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Casa. Appreciate that. Other questions or comments on any items on the consent agenda from any members of the Village Council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8 on our agenda tonight, is our active agenda. And we have a number of items on our active agenda tonight. Why not round out the year with a bang, right? So everyone's going to get an opportunity to move and second for something here. We'll start with item 8A. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance establishing special service area number 6 in the village of Downers Grove?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Hearing none, any questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Rankin.
I just wanted to thank the members of the Fairview Fire Protection District. I know that you took a lot of your personal time to remedy this and to meet with the village, meet with the county, pull your neighbors and make sure that they all had the right information. So I think we all really appreciate that you took all that time to make this result that we're voting on tonight. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the Village Council? I'll just pick up on that and congratulate and thank members of the Fire Protection Board, Fairview Fire Protection District, excuse me, as well as DuPage County Board staff, as well as the village, for really doing something that was quite innovative here in terms of taking a situation that was really non-functional for all those involved and coming up with a sustainable solution that's going to continue to provide services at a very reasonable rate for all those residents affected. And this is something that takes a lot of collaboration, a lot of cooperation and communication amongst a lot of different bodies, as well as residents. And I think this is a real success story. So I'm glad to see this come to this stage. And I want to thank everyone for their participation in it. If there are no further questions or comments, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the matter passes unanimously. It brings us to item 8B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance amending parking restrictions on Washington Street from Maple to Curtis?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. It brings us to item 8C as in Charlie. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance that will impose the 2013 aggregate tax levy?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? I'll just point out that this and a number of other items that we'll be addressing very shortly have been the subject of numerous public meetings, and we are now at the last of that list of meetings that Mr. Baker will normally put up on the screen. And we've now come to the more than the home stretch. We're at the finish line. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously as well. Brings us to item D, 8D as in David. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance levying taxes for the fiscal year beginning January 2013 and ending on December 2013 for the Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 2, also known as the Downers Grove Downtown Service Area?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the matter passed unanimously. Brings us to item 8F as in Frank. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance levying taxes for the fiscal year beginning January, ending December 2013 for the Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 5, also known as the Atwood subdivision?
Four.
skipped-
Mayor.
Skip
Number
letter
four.
D.
Skip D.
Number 4.
Boy, I crossed one off in my haste. I got it. Thank you. Just making sure you were paying attention.
Oh, we are.
All right, then. There'll be a test on this tomorrow.
I'm sure.
Sorry, we are on item 8E as in Edward, not F as in Frank. Item 8E as in Edward. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance levying taxes for fiscal year 2013 for the Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 4, also known as the Green Acre subdivision?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passed unanimously. Now, we are on item 8F as in Frank. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance levying taxes for fiscal year 2013 for the Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 5, also known as the Atwood subdivision?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Any questions or comments from members of the village council? May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter also passes unanimously. It brings us to item 8G as in Gus. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance levying taxes for fiscal year 2013 for Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 6, also known as the Fairview Fire Protection District?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from members of the audience? Any questions or comments from members of the village council? May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. Well, I think I'm going to cut everyone a break here so that we don't get too tired. Why don't we have a motion to adopt ordinances that would affect items H through O with respect to our active agenda tonight. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt ordinances 00-05395 through 00-05401 and ordinance 00-05405. These are again our active agenda items H as in Henry through O as in Oscar, and they all pertain to similar things, which are the abatement of the taxes that we just levied. And we can go into that in a moment, but
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt ordinances 00-05395 through 00-05401 and ordinance 00-05405.
Second.
any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to these proposed abatements? Questions or comments from members of the village council? I'll just simply point out what I said a moment ago, is we just levied some taxes a moment ago for fiscal year 2013. Now, these are abatements, which means that portions of the taxes that we just levied will not be collected and therefore abated, because we don't need to collect them, because we have other sources of revenue for them. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. All the abatements pass unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our active agenda. It brings us to item 9 on our agenda, which is our first reading or our workshop agenda, where we entertain items for discussion and presentation for potential action at a later point in time. Tonight we have one item on our active agenda. It's item 9A as an apple. And as is customary, I will ask Village Manager David Fieldman to please present the item.
Thank you. I will actually call on our EDC President Michael Casa to explain the background of this Lamborghini dealership coming to the Village of Downers Grove.
Welcome back, Mr. Casa.
Thank you. Michael Casa, President, Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, 5159 Mokel Drive in downtown Downers Grove. Mayor Tully and Village Commissioners. In 2011, the Village Council approved an agreement that brought a new Bentley dealership to Ogden Avenue in Downers Grove. The following year, in 2012, the Council approved an agreement that brought an Aston Martin dealer to Ogden Avenue in Downers Grove. Not to be outdone, in 2013, I am pleased to present an agreement that will bring yet another upscale auto dealer to the Ogden Avenue corridor, Lamborghini. Lamborghini Downers Grove would open at the same site as the Bentley dealership at 310-330 Ogden Avenue. The Bentley and Lamborghini dealerships will both be owned by Gold Coast Exotic Imports, LLC. Gold Coast is part of the Joe Perillo dealership network. The resolution before you amends the sales tax rebate agreement that was approved in 2011 between the Village of Downers Grove and Gold Coast Exotic Imports, LLC, doing business as Bentley of Downers Grove. The amended agreement would include the new Lamborghini dealership. The existing agreement provides a 50% rebate of the sales tax revenues received by the village for a 10-year period after the base amount of $5 million in taxable sales is received each year. The new Lamborghini dealership is projected to generate $8 million in taxable sales for each full year. With the 50% sales tax rebate, the village is expected to receive $40,000 in net sales tax revenue annually. Gold Coast Exotic Imports will remodel a portion of the interior of the facility to meet Lamborghini's showroom specifications. They will also make minor changes to the building exterior and change the freestanding and building signage to include Lamborghini. Gold Coast Exotic Imports shall make all of the improvements by December 31, 2014, although I'd like to point out that they're hoping to open in March, so they'll have these done a lot sooner than that. In addition, the village may use funds from the Ogden Avenue Tax Increment Financing District to make the rebate payments for TIF-eligible expenses. Gold Coast Exotic Imports shall submit copies of paid invoices for TIF-eligible expenses no later than December 31, 2014. All other items and provisions of the existing agreement will remain the same. The Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation strongly supports this sales tax agreement. For several years, the Village of Downers Grove and the Downers Grove EDC have pursued a very successful strategy to attract auto dealers to the Ogden Avenue corridor. This strategy has been strongly supported by the Village Council. These dealerships, the dealership Gold Coast Exotic Imports, shall make all of their improvements, again, by the end of the year. But again, as I mentioned before, the expectation is that they'll have them done in the spring when they want to have their grand opening. These dealerships that have come to Ogden Avenue have had a tremendous impact on our local economy. They have generated substantial sales tax revenues. They have enhanced Ogden Avenue as a major commercial corridor, and these new dealership facilities have made the Ogden Avenue corridor more attractive. With Aston Martin, Bentley, and Lamborghini all located close together on Ogden, we have an opportunity to create a hub for additional upscale auto dealerships. The EDC will seek out other high-end dealers who may want to join this impressive lineup. I would like to thank the council and the village staff for their hard work on this project, and also would like to thank Rod Murad, who is here tonight representing Perillo Motors and Gold Coast Exotic Imports. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Casa. Obviously, this is very exciting news. Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience at this point in time with respect to this item? Hearing none. Everyone's too busy picking out which color Lamborghini they're going to buy, right? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Mr. Durkin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out that, you know, people at home could be watching and wondering why are we rebating 50% of sales tax. These agreements are basically the same agreements that we have with each and every one of our dealerships up and down Ogden Avenue. And the reason that we do it as a village is because if we don't do it, another community is going to do it. And it's pretty much the way that the business is run today. I just want to point out that we also, with this, are going to be doing the additional quarter holdback before the payment itself is released. So when the first quarter is over, those tax payments, sales tax rebates, would not be issued to the dealer until the third quarter of that year. So there will be a complete quarter that we would hold the money back. And that's something I'm very glad that we're continuing the practice of doing. The only question I have, and I apologize for not asking this earlier, is that Lamborghini was in Westmont. Can we just get a little history or a little knowledge from either staff or Mr. Casa on the movement of the dealership over to us? I'm assuming it's probably the financial strength, the dealership network of Mr. Perillo.
Yes, absolutely. We met with the folks at Westmont who were aware of this move, and it really speaks to the strength and the success of the dealership that Mr. Perillo and his team have been operating at Bentley. That was a move supported by corporate Lamborghini, and this dealership in this location fits them very well, and we're happy to have it.
The Perillo Motors, the Perillo Network has a reputation for managing very successful upscale dealerships. In addition to Lamborghini and Bentley, they have a BMW dealership in the city of Chicago. And so this is sort of their niche, is the upscale market. And so Mr. Murad, if you have any other dealers you want to bring us, please, you're more than welcome to do so.
Any question, I'll be happy to answer if you like. But basically,
Could we just ask that you come to the microphone so you can be on live TV?
sure. It's a pleasure. Good afternoon.
Good evening, welcome.
My name's Rod Murad. I'm with Bentley Gold Coast and Gold Coast Exotic Imports, Perillo Motor Groups. Basically, Gold Coast Exotic Imports manage several high-end dealerships, including Bentley, Lamborghini, Rolls-Royce, Bugatti, and Maserati. And the Lamborghini dealership in Downers Grove will be in addition to the Lamborghini Gold Coast, so it will be a separate dealership. All in all, the group generates over $100 million in sales, but the strength for the operations in Downers Grove is that Bentley Downers Grove and Lamborghini Downers Grove will have their own allocations from the factories. Will be designated strictly to be sold in Downers Grove. So that's the strength.
Great. Well, I truly support this. I think this is a great addition. I thank you for your continuous commitment to our community, especially investing these types of dollars into your dealership. I look at it, these sales tax revenues are what we have to do, but if you look at the bigger picture like I do, those that are coming to buy a Lamborghini may not necessarily live right within the village of Downers Grove or the surrounding communities. They're traveling from distances to be here, and as they travel here, they learn about our community, they stop, they shop, and they eat. And maybe they'll move here or, continue to shop here for their vehicles or goods. So to me, this is a huge win, and I compliment everyone, and especially Michael Cass with the EDC for the hard work to continuously promote our dealerships, which your predecessor did such a great job doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it. And thank you for choosing Downers Grove. You made a very wise choice. Other questions or comments from members of the Village Council with respect to this workshop item? Hearing none, we look forward to considering it in the near future. And much success in 2014.
And that ends our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 10, which is the mayor's report. And I do have a report tonight. While it is getting set up, I had the opportunity to attend a conference that is held annually, sponsored by the National League of Cities. National League of Cities is, as you might imagine, a national organization of municipalities that includes 49 different state municipal leagues, as well as more than 19,000 cities, villages, and towns that it represents, including the village of Downers Grove. It has many different activities, and I would encourage folks to get on the website nlc.org to learn more about the National League of Cities. But their big event of the year is the annual Congress of Cities and Exposition, which is held in a different city every year. And this past year, in November, it was held in Seattle, Washington. And as a representative of the Village of Downers Grove, I had the opportunity to attend. Don't always get to make it due to work obligations and other things, but it worked out this year. And I wanted to take a few minutes just to sort of share with everyone else in the Village Council and staff just sort of the highlights of the conference, and would be happy to go into a deeper dive on the more details of some of these subjects. And I did bring home some literature. Of course, I'm finding that, unlike the old days, Commissioner Durkin, where you would come home with a suitcase full of materials, everything now is sent to you in a PDF, which doesn't surprise me. So I have surprisingly few brochures, but a lot of electronic information that I will provide to staff and anyone who's interested in going into some more details, be happy to do so. I'm just going to touch upon a few things that I think might be of interest to everyone, and also touch upon a couple things that I think might particularly be relevant to Downers Grove, given some things that have been going on recently, or even issues that have come to us here at the podium from time to time. So there's a picture here of the general opening session, which featured a number of speakers, including the General Counsel of Microsoft, who gave one of the most riveting presentations I'd ever seen. It might be because he had the best presentation technology of anyone who was at the conference, and also had some national leaders, including the Secretary of Transportation, that spoke to the entire group. But the main benefit of the conference, for those who've attended, is meeting our peers. As I mentioned, the National League of Cities is attended by more than 2,400 local leaders from across the U.S. That was just this year. And by far, the biggest benefit of the program is to able to meet and compare notes and discuss ideas with colleagues from across the country. And I just grabbed a handful of business cards that I picked up while I was there, just to give you an idea of the diversity. I had long conversations with municipal representatives from North Adams, Massachusetts, the city of Northport, Florida. I had no idea where that was, but had a long conversation with the vice mayor of that town. And also I also spent some time with the mayor of Coral Springs, Florida. Representatives from the city of Tolson in Arizona, which is just outside of Phoenix. Had a long conversation on a bus to and from one of the events to Anise Parker, who is the mayor. I'm sorry, actually that's the mayor of Houston, but her deputy chief of staff, Kippy Caraway. Representatives from South Seattle Community College, which I'll be touching upon in a moment. The budget director for the city of Cincinnati, who I will put Judy Butney up against any day of the week. Also folks from Ridgeland, Missouri, and Harlingen, Texas. So one of the best parts of it, talking to people, you find out that everybody has a little bit of different circumstances. We all have many of the same challenges, and finding out how others have dealt with them in their communities and their environments, I always find to be extremely helpful and thought-provoking. And some of the topics of the different programs are reflected up here. So a little bit more about the 2013 Congress of Cities and Exposition. It focused on 3 different areas this year, including knowledge building, leadership training, and also engagement opportunities. I already touched a little bit about the engagement opportunities. Knowledge building and leadership training are primarily provided through attendance at different seminars and mobile workshops. The seminars are always done on site at the convention hall, and you can choose which track you want to go on, pick and choose what's most relevant to your community. They give you a nice little brochure. You can figure out where you want to be and what you want to hear, pick up the materials, and then go to the next one. I always try to grab as much as I can and bring it back. And again, I'll have all of this available for members of the council. The mobile workshops I always find to be particularly interesting because they actually will take you out on a bus, and you will get to visit different things. You're not just talking about theory, but you're visiting the actual projects in place. I'll mention one in a moment, but probably the best part of the bus ride out to one of the mobile workshops was essentially the deputy mayor of the city of Seattle spent the entire time talking about the recent elections in that town, some of the issues facing their community, some issues that Illinois is about to face that they've already been through, such as medical marijuana and some other issues. So it was just fascinating, and she basically took an open Q&A and the whole ride there and the whole way back, and that was fascinating. Some of the programs that I did manage to go into, and again, I'm just going to feature some of the ones that I thought were most relevant to the Village of Downers Grove, and I know Mr. Cass will find this most interesting. There was a program which he and I have already talked about, and I've sent him the materials from the person who presented it, with respect to evaluating economic development incentive programs. Yes, there are people who actually do this. And some of the questions that were asked during the presentation, and again, I'm only going to touch upon a few of the slides, were in measuring the effectiveness of an economic development program, did the incentive affect the choices that businesses made? This is what we always ask. Are they coming here but for the incentive? That's a major question. Were any existing businesses harmed by the incentive? Obviously, equity and fairness is always an issue, as well as setting precedent. Is the economic development incentive program that you're developing one that's meeting the community's goals? The question that we always ask is how could it be improved? I would also throw in there how can it be measured? And are the community's incentives working together efficiently to achieve desired results? And again, this is just one of the topics that was discussed during probably an hour-and-a-half discussion of how to measure economic development. I have some additional materials, some of which I blatantly borrowed some slides because they were available on the internet, so I'm using them here. It's not a Title 17 violation, it's fair use, trust me. No money changes hands here. But there are different presentations that are provided in terms of how you can measure performance of an economic development incentive program. Communication is also an important part of that. This is some of the things that we've talked about here as a council. Do our residents and do other stakeholders fully understand why our economic development incentive programs are here, what they do, what are they trying to achieve? Some of the questions I think were asked with respect to the one that we discussed tonight, as well as others in recent history. So that was one of the sessions that I attended, and again, there's more information on that. Another one that I attended had to do with a topic that I know is actually very similar to something that's happening here in DuPage County. And let me set the stage first of all. In the Seattle area, there is something called the Seattle Manufacturing Advisory Group, which has partnered with local community colleges in order to develop workforce training, because they were finding that their manufacturing facilities, which of course there they have both maritime and aerospace challenges, that they weren't getting the workforce with the type of training necessary to support their manufacturing incentives. And this was a real challenge out in their area. Meanwhile, they also had an issue about making sure that people had basic skills in order to get jobs and become employed. So both the municipalities, the state, manufacturers groups, and the community colleges got together and put together a program where the manufacturers and the community colleges will work together. Manufacturers will help provide recommendations for what the course curricula ought to be at the community colleges, and then also help as adjunct training for people to get jobs at an entry level, who then can provide will then have the types of skills and provide the type of labor necessary to support the maritime, aerospace, and other manufacturing industries in that area. This is a program that has worked very well, and the example that we got to see was a partnership between the South Seattle Community College and the Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Community, which was supported by some of the aerospace manufacturers out in that part of the country. And the one thing that was missing, well, I'll come back to that in a second, but one thing that I think made this one a little unique is the state of Washington actually included funding for this as a line item in the state's budget. I don't think we can expect that anytime soon from the state of Illinois, but I do want to point out that this does mirror efforts that have been underway in our own backyard. Our own Aero Gear, for example, has been working with manufacturers associations in DuPage County, and has suggested working with the College of DuPage, community college here, to do something very similar. Now, we don't have maritime necessarily, but with companies like Aero Gear, we do have aerospace, and obviously other manufacturing needs. So I made sure that I shared this information with Marianne Cervenka, who's with Aero Gear, and some of the manufacturing groups here in DuPage County, as well as the College of DuPage, to see if what progress they've made out in Seattle might be borrowed from with respect to doing some of that here in DuPage County. A little closer to home, we had a gentleman appear before us at the podium not too long ago asking us, why don't we have an ordinance that supports food trucks? And it was very ironic because right about the time that gentleman, Giuseppe I believe was his name, was reaching out to us, but before he spoke to us, I was out in Seattle and I saw that one of the sessions was Food on Wheels, Mobile Vending Goes Mainstream. And it was all about food trucks and other mobile vending. So of course I had to attend because I knew this was a subject that was going to come up here at Village Hall. And I'll be happy to share the information with everyone. But I found it to be really interesting because I didn't really look at it the way I do now before I went out there. We had presentations from a number of different cities, I think Cincinnati or Cleveland, excuse me, Cleveland, as well as Seattle and Portland were the cities that were featured and how they dealt with this. And they've already gone through the effort. They've already come up with ordinances. They've already addressed the issues with the community, and they have viable mobile vending programs in those towns. But some of the things to think about, which I hadn't really thought about, was why even have food trucks at all or food carts? And one of the things that the presenters pointed out was it really supports entrepreneurship because it's an opportunity for someone to get involved in a business venture with much lower lending risk, much less capital risk, and to get started, and if successful, can actually lead to a more brick and mortar type of business within your community. It attracts culinary talent. I know we all hear constantly from members of our community, why don't we have a restaurant like this? Why don't we have a restaurant like that? And if you want to attract culinary talent to your community, that's one way to do it. There is a elimination of restaurant deserts. That's not desserts, that's deserts in neighborhood districts. And in some of these cities or areas that were underserved by culinary arts. So this was a way to reach out to those areas and turn areas that perhaps had been very quiet and not very productive to suddenly areas where people would gather, and once they would gather, of course, they would eat and then they would shop and they would do other things that would provide benefits. The other thing I hadn't thought of was that there's a safety aspect to it, and that is you now have sort of the mobile vendors out there who are the eyes and ears in the street, and then they can report different issues within the community if there are safety issues or even crime issues. That's not something I had considered. I mentioned the investment, the threshold to get involved in this kind of a venture is substantially smaller than what it would be to buy a restaurant and get the financing for one and put the risk that's involved in that. And I know that there's some issues which were discussed at the conference about the reluctance of brick and mortar restaurants to embrace mobile vending because they view it as competition, but if handled properly and where they're at and where they can stay and when they have to move, if all those things are handled, you can really support both in a very vibrant fashion. And as I mentioned, and I hadn't thought of this, is it really can be an entree for startups to begin something, establish a viable business, which can then lead to something that's bigger and generate more revenue for your community. Just a few things to think of. Again, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but these were some things that this seminar had kind of opened my eyes to. And as I mentioned, I think this was the city of Cleveland. Their ordinances are listed there on this slide that again shamelessly borrowed from the presentation because it was a lot easier to just take pictures of the slides than it was to write things down. But should we ever decide to look into this, there are some models out there that I think are already tried and true and could potentially be adapted. Again, not adding to the high priority action list item, don't worry about that. Just pointing this out, food for thought, no pun intended. I know a lot of us will also wonder, well, how did all these other communities, how did they weather the Great Recession? And there was a presentation that was given by the budget director for Cincinnati, Ohio, and they walked through the process that they went through. It turned out they were in a pretty bad situation back in 08 and 09, just like many municipalities were. And a presentation was given by their budget director about something called priority-driven budgeting. This is just one slide from it. There are actually a number of different of these diagrams where they sat down with members of the community over many meetings and basically asked the community, well, what do you want to be? For example, we want to have efficient and effective basic services. Well, that sounds very fine and dandy, but how do you achieve that? And what does that mean to you? And once they identified those things, they started talking about what it would cost and what they would have to do within their budget in order to achieve these identified priorities within their budget and make adjustments elsewhere. And again, not suggesting that anyone should or shouldn't follow this approach, but I found it interesting that there are some common themes in this presentation that the city of Cincinnati went through, that the village of Downers Grove went through rather successfully, and I would argue better and sooner. Just to give you an idea, after this process, the city of Cincinnati identified the following 7 different areas that you already saw the one that was depicted in that diagram that their community decided were their priorities, and then they basically developed their budget around those priorities. This is what they decided was important to them and what they wanted to support with their limited resources, understanding that there are finite needs. And as a result of their process, and again, I'm only borrowing a handful of slides out of many, these are some of the directions that were given by the Cincinnati City Council in order to achieve what the community identified were their priorities in terms of their budget, and different things that they had to do, such as figure out functions that they would no longer do, but perhaps they could share or find another political body to undertake. Recommend changes to mandated programs that exceeded the minimum requirements of the mandate. Figure out how they might be able to support certain functions that the community viewed as favorable and desirable with something other than taxes, such as through a fee structure. So just some interesting parallels there, and it's always nice to see when someone gets up and is asked to speak on a topic, and it sounds like, yeah, we've been there, we've done that. That was interesting, so I thought I'd share that with everyone. The other piece, and I'll wrap up here very shortly, that is, of course, always interesting at the National League of Cities is there's the Congress of Cities and then there's the Exposition. And the Exposition, of course, is the exposition hall where all the vendors are there, and you walk around and you find out what the latest and greatest is with respect to all things municipal, whether it's traffic calming or it's fire trucks or ambulances, different type of concrete, and software and technology is always a key. So I made sure that I went through the exhibit hall and looked for anything that might be useful. I know in years past, I believe it was at Reno, Commissioner Durkin came across the traffic calming presentation or segment of one of the exposition halls, and of course brought back different ideas about traffic calming. So every now and then you'll see something new there. A couple of things that I thought were interesting, both are technology-based. There was a vendor there that was talking about something called Public Stuff, and this is something that Commissioner Neustadt will find very interesting because it's basically software that allows people using their mobile devices through an app that is with the community, and I realize that we're either doing this or about to do it, where they're basically your eyes and ears in the street, and there are convenient ways to report different things, whether it's a storm drain that's covered with leaves, or it's an area that's not plowed, or it's a sidewalk that has a crack. We're not going to allow you to have this, Mr. Falish, just to let you know. You might overload the system. I'm just kidding. But it really empowers the citizenry to bring things to the attention of municipal staff through an app where things are easily categorized using icons, very friendly and very user-friendly. Something that, if you look at the website, you can learn more about it, but I thought that was kind of interesting and something that's similar to what I know this council has embraced. The other thing I'll just point out, only because I'm sure that our finance department, as brave as they are, might find this a little scary, but interesting. There was a demonstration that was given to me by vendors with something called Citizen Budget, and this is actually a program where you can put in your own municipality's financial information, needs, demands, resources, expenses, revenues, the whole 9 yards, and each member of the community that visits the site, using sort of the slider bars, can say, well, I want more of this, less of this. If you like something, you have to move it up, and then it will tell you how much that cost. So you can sort of do your own little, if I were the sole decision maker with respect to the budget of the Village of Downers Grove, here's how I would move things around. And it does two things. One, it provides valuable input to the policymakers, members of a village council or a city council, but it also is a terrific educational device to members of the public, because they actually see, well, if I want this, then it's going to cost me that. Or if I want more of this, I'm going to have less of that. And it starts to educate folks on that balancing that we always have to do every budget cycle. So it was just something interesting, and I know I sent it to Village Manager Fieldman, who immediately deleted the email. I'm just kidding, but something interesting to look at, and there's some demos that are available and even a little video on it, but something interesting. It just seems like every time I go out there, there's always something interesting and new, a way to engage the community, which of course is one of our high action priority items. So again, I promised to be brief. I purposely did not go into a lot of detail. I do have more materials, and I will forward and collect all the different electronic versions of the things that I brought back, including the nice little pamphlet on mobile vending. But again, don't always get the opportunity to go out to the National League of Cities, but always learn something new whenever I go. And since we are about innovation and thinking beyond our borders and thinking beyond boxes, I think it's something worthwhile doing. I know we can't always do it. It's difficult, particularly a long trip like Seattle, but I think from time to time, if those of us can find the way to make the time to attend, I think it's beneficial to bring that back to the community. As in the past, we've not only learned things, but I think we've brought things back that have actually been implemented as programs.
Yeah. Traffic calming, reverse 911.
Exactly. So that is the end of the presentation. Obviously, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now or at any point in time. I'll send you the presentation as well. I appreciate your riveting attention. Commissioner Durgan.
I can't let you off that easy.
No, not at all.
Yeah, first, I just want to thank you for going. I mean, I looked at going, but I couldn't work it into my schedule. I've had the opportunity to go to National League of Cities when I was in Reno and then in New Orleans. And there is a lot to be learned. And what's learned is a lot of times you're better off if you go with more than just one person from council. So as we look forward in the future and the economy's change here, I hope we can look for ways to budget so we can at least send 1 or 2 people out on a regular basis, because there's a heck of a lot of information and a lot of great ideas that we came back, like I'd referenced traffic calming, the reverse 911. Those are all ideas that came out of the National League of Cities that we see today here. The question I have for you, Mayor, is of everything you've seen, the exhibit hall, all that, what is it that you see, that you saw, you learned, being implemented here in Downers Grove for the next 12 to 18 months? Besides food trucks.
Well, I think that would be the easiest one, to the extent that we ever decided to do that. And again, I'm not advocating whether we do or don't, but that was something that it became very clear to me there was more to it than I originally thought. And there's also a lot that's already been done that if we ever decided to do something like that, there's a lot of information and ordinances that are already in place by people who have already worked this out in a fair amount of detail and have already addressed a lot of the issues that have popped up. And again, I'm not suggesting that's something that we want to tackle right away, but it was coincidental that at the same time someone was here asking about the topic, there was a session on it, which was very well attended, by the way. I think the other issue about measuring the success of economic development programs and how to better educate the public on why we do them and what their mission is, I think that's something that not only could we, but we're probably going to implement here in one way, shape, or form or another. And just the ability to communicate, well, let me, before I go to that last point, I think that there's already a nascent effort to do something like the partnership between the community college in Seattle and the manufacturing associations. I think there are nascent efforts to do something like that here in DuPage County, which of course benefits and impacts Downers Grove. And to the extent that we can borrow from what's already been accomplished somewhere else and tailor it and implement it here in DuPage, I think that's terrific. And I know Choose DuPage has been involved in that in some respects, and I think we're going to see more of it. Great. But then last, as you well know from having attended in the past, the ability to really network and communicate with peers in other cities is, I think, as, if not more educational than any of the formal programs, which are quite remarkable in and of themselves.
Thank you.
That ends my report. And that brings us to item 11, which is the manager's report. Mr. Fieldman.
We do have a manager's report tonight, Mayor, and it's information on the zoning ordinance update, a project we've been working on all year. And here to present information on this item is our Community Development Director, Tom Dabereiner.
Good evening, Mr. Dabereiner.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You did receive the copy of the draft comprehensive amendment to the Village of Downers Grove zoning ordinance, which represents Chapter 28 of the Municipal Code. And we're simply introducing it tonight. There will be many more weeks of discussion on this item, but I did want to highlight some items as we go into the process here. First of all, the preparation of the draft ordinance was a high priority action item that was decided by Council over a year ago now. We started this process because there really had been no major update since the 1960s. We wanted to recognize, for example, that ordinance, which really spent a lot of time and effort and text on the fact that there was a lot of area of Downers Grove yet to be developed for the first time, and that really no longer exists. Those opportunities really don't exist here, and in fact, instead, we are a community where we're really looking at reinvestment and redevelopment. And so this zoning ordinance focused on really those elements of zoning. About a year ago, we started the process of selecting a consultant to help prepare the updated zoning ordinance. We began a series of public meetings after some research was done, after a significant amount of research was done by the consultant and staff. We started with some public hearings with the Plan Commission in the month of June of this year. That concluded in November with the unanimous recommendation from the Plan Commission recommending the draft zoning ordinance to you for discussion. A number of the changes that you'll find as you go through this were really prompted by several themes here. One is to create a document that is simple, attractive, and easy to use. Now, it is a zoning ordinance after all, so there are probably some limitations as to just how attractive and easy to use we can make it. But I think this really does take great strides. This is not the final cover, by the way. We are working on cover. This is an example of how attractive this can look. But the other changes that we were really looking for were prompted from the comprehensive plan that was completed 2 years ago. We also had a list of village needs, staff needs, things that have been brought up by Zoning Board of Appeals, Plan Commission, others with the village that really turned on ease of use and variations that have been routinely granted over time, prompted up questions about, hey, maybe we should take another look at these kinds of things. And then, of course, we relied on the consultant, who is a nationally known consultant, and our particular representative has been working at this for 30 years. Really relied on them to let us know what others were doing around the country, how we needed to update our ordinance, update our definitions, take a look at best practices and see if we can incorporate those into the proposed ordinance. I expect everybody to be able to read all of this. This is really here simply to show that we do include really every section that we already have in our existing zoning ordinance. It is reorganized somewhat, well, pretty significantly, not just somewhat. But it is all there. It just may be in a different spot, and I know some of the questions that I've been getting already relate to that very point. It might be missing, or it might be reduced in one article, but in fact it's increased in a different article within the zoning ordinance. Some of the other more interesting things about this is we have a lot more graphics in this document. These are just a couple pages of examples, but you can see, a picture can tell 1,000 words, and perhaps a lot more clearly than 1,000 words of zoning ordinance text. So we're trying to include graphics wherever we can. We include tables because tables really can very concisely summarize information, provide us comparisons, things like that, and not just staff. We're talking about all users, really. One source, one page, or several pages within the document altogether. So we have a lot more graphics, we have a lot more tables. And then one thing that I wanted to point out was we have a lot of hot links in this document, and when you use the PDF that we have, those links, and they're really shown here in blue, and this is just one quick example. You can go to this portion of the zoning ordinance, say, aha, I need to know more information about this element. Click on that hot link and it'll take you right to that page. So that's something that I think is a big improvement for the usability of this document. As you go through, and I realize it can be really intimidating going through a 200-page plus document really from scratch, but I wanted to highlight some of the things that are in place to help all of you and the public go through this document. First of all, it is organized in a way with a lot more white space, and it does use color. It does use red for headings and things like that, kind of a reddish color font for headings. But at the bottom of these pages, you'll find blue text, and you don't need to read this. I'm just pointing out an example. You'll see blue text that very often explains exactly what the thought was behind the change, or highlighting the fact that this was changed. Sometimes highlighting the fact that there wasn't a change, that it's just a rewrite, a reorganization, a cleanup of the text. So these are the kinds of things that you can look for to help as you go through the document and try to figure out what's important and what isn't. We also provided, spent a good amount of time providing what we're calling a concordance of some of the more notable changes. And this concordance really shows us in order the significant changes that are represented in the new document, where the representative section would have been found or is found in the existing zoning ordinance, and then what's the source for the change, whether it's the comprehensive plan, whether it's just a modernization issue, whether it's something that staff had requested. And if it's from the comprehensive plan, we did attempt to provide a page number or a section, some guidance there, so that everyone going through this document can see that the changes all have a source for its change. So between the blue text and this concordance, I think you'll be able to find your way through probably 95% of the changes that were made, certainly the ones that were significant. And I do want to wrap this up now with the next steps. I know it's the end of the year. I'm kind of out of jokes. But I'm going to wrap this up with the next steps. First of all, the zoning ordinance will be placed on the council agenda as a first reading in January. And we are looking at potentially having more than one first reading, and really this is up to all of you and how quickly we can get through this. We might take a look at this in sections and just kind of run through it. There is a lot of information here, so it's hard to conceive of getting through all of it in just 30 minutes or so. With that, I promise that there's more to come. I don't really want to get into detailed questions about the changes tonight, but if you have questions about the document itself and its preparation, I'd be happy to try to answer those now.
Thank you, Mr. Dave Reiner. This is obviously something that has been a long time coming. It's been something 45-plus years in the making. So it would deserve more than one presentation and ample discussion. Fully understand that this is being presented for everyone's review, and we have some time between now and the next time we will visit this topic to dive into it. I know different people will digest it at different speeds. Commissioner Jose, for example, might probably read it on the express train from Union Station here. I might take a little bit longer to get through it than that. But I think
Take the local.
Well, there you go. 50 minutes.
Or
No
you can just
problem.
get delayed like that.
Thank you.
Local.
But obviously, we're really pleased to see this step coming forward. It is a milestone in a long project that's long been in the works. I'll ask if there's any members of the audience have any questions at this point, although understanding that this is all very preliminary. Basically, it's just being rolled out for a series of meetings and the opportunity for everyone to review it at opportunities down the road in terms of discussion, input. This is sort of its debut, if you will. Sure, Mr. Falish. I can promise you I will not have any answers at this juncture.
Frank Falish, 820 Prairie. I'm wondering, is this going to be distributed to the public and interested persons?
Yes,
Okay, good, because that's important, I think.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions at this early juncture from any members of the village council? No. Everyone's going to keep their powder dry until they've had an opportunity to get through it? I think that makes sense. Terrific. Well, we look forward to diving into it. Thank you for rolling it out.
That ends our report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, terrific. That brings us to item 12, Attorney's Report.
No report, Mayor, thank you.
No report at this time. All right, that brings us to item 3, Councilman Reports of New Business. We'll start with Commissioner Jose. Do you have anything, any items of new business?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Barnett?
Nothing, Mayor.
No? Commissioner Rankin?
Nothing, Mayor.
Commissioner Olson? Commissioner Durkin?
Nothing I know of right now, except maybe food on wheels, I don't know.
Well, you don't have to have any items of new business, I'm just asking. Commissioner Neustadt?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
All right, well, in that case,
Smile, you're getting in the Tribune.
I have no items of new business at this point in time. We cannot adjourn tonight. We do need to adjourn into closed session, so I'll ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session.
Mayor, I move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the village.
Second.
Any questions or comments from anyone on the motion? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, we are adjourned into executive session. Merry Christmas, everyone. May you have a happy and prosperous 2014. We'll see